Welcome. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm Charlotte Duran. I'm a producer here with KPCC in person. For those of you who are new to KPCC, we are a multi-platform organization. We're on the air at 89.3. We're online, and you can also find lots of our in-person events at kpcc.org/in-person. We're all over Southern California as well as here in the Crawford Family Forum. So please check out more of our events. We have an Unheard LA coming up in July. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. We are live video streaming, so we ask that you not video record tonight, but please take photos, connect with us on social. We're at KPCC in person. You can also connect with us a few other ways. We have these great cards on the chairs. If you want to become a member or a source for us, fill out the card, and then myself and Daphne will take the cards at the end of the show. Now I'd like to introduce tonight's host, Priska Neely.
Hello, hello. I'm Priska Neely. I cover early childhood here at KPCC, and I'm really excited to see so many men in the audience. I mean, I know this is a dad's thing, but give yourself a round of applause for being here. I'm really excited about this. I cover early childhood, so I have the very unique opportunity of telling stories about kids 0 to 5, and I say the people and the policies that kind of make their lives better or sometimes worse, depending on what's going on. And in that work, I find myself looking at the prenatal side of things. I find myself looking at maternal side of things. When I cover workforce issues in terms of early childhood educators, the field is mostly women. And I found myself thinking earlier this year, what about dads? What about the men? And that's why I wanted to have this conversation tonight. I was also looking around for some research about men and paternal bonding and that type of thing. And there really is more research about what happens when dads are absent than what happens when they are present in the lives of their kids. And I thought that that in itself was a pretty strong statement. So we are also going to be talking about some of the research that does exist about that tonight. And we're going to start with talking with just some men about their experiences and how fatherhood and our understanding of fatherhood has changed over the years. One question that we've been asking our listeners over the weeks leading up to this is, how has your perception of being a dad changed since you became a dad? And we got some really, really, really interesting responses. So we decided to also ask that question to some dads here at KPCC. And we also got some lovely responses from them. And so we're going to play a little video for you now with them and their answers to that question.
Hi, I'm Amy Martinez, host of Take Two on 89.3 KPCC.
Hi, my name is Jacob Margolis, science reporter at KPCC.
Hi, I'm Larry Mantle, the host of Air Talk on KPCC.
I'm John Cohn, KPCC's managing producer of KPCC in person.
My name is Tony Federico. I'm the technical director of live events for KPCC in person.
Hi, my name is Adolfo Guzman Lopez. I'm a reporter at KPCC.
So how have my thoughts changed on being a parent? I would say I'm actually now having thoughts on being a parent. 2 weeks ago, I didn't have a kid. Now I do. I'm thinking a lot more about it.
I thought being a dad was going to be all throwing the ball around with the kids and taking them to ball games and doing fun stuff. I knew there was going to be a lot of work to it, but I didn't realize the ratio was going to be so different.
For me, the biggest surprise around fatherhood is the re-examination that I had to do of my own childhood.
I wanted my kids not just to succeed in life and in what they wanted to do, but just be better people.
One of the things that I've learned over the years of being a father is to be able to recognize my mother's voice in parenting.
And I felt the pressure as a dad to try and make sure that they had a path and an example where they could do that.
Because having him in the moment of dealing with circumstances of his life in school caused me to reflect on what I had gone through and to remember aspects of those experiences that before being a dad hadn't stayed in my mind.
I've actually been really interested in hearing other people's kids' stories, which before this whole thing, I really wasn't.
You tell somebody you're a new parent, how willing they are to provide advice, unsolicited, on all things. Like you say, oh, I had a kid. Well, here's what you need to do with feeding. Here's what you need to do with sleep. Here's what you need to do with training. Here's what you need to do with diapers. Here are the products you need to use.
There's a lot more than just feeding them, putting clothes on their back, and making sure they get to and from wherever they need to go.
And also, every time I bike ride in Los Angeles, I think about and worry about dying now, whereas before, I did not. So that's really lovely.
So I think that really kind of hit on a lot of the points that we'll delve into further tonight. And I know what you're probably all thinking. You didn't know what those people looked like. You may hear those voices on the radio. You may hear my voice on the radio here, 89.3. This is my face. So we are going to now bring up our panelists. First, I'd like to welcome to the stage Eli Littman, if you want to come on up. He is a blog editor for Los Angeles City Dads Group. Hey, Eli, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks.
Next, we're going to bring up Alex Alfaro. He is a dad, a writer, a performing artist, and a spoken word poet. Okay, next we are going to bring up Donald Williams. He's the executive director of Dad Project. So I wanted to start with asking you the question that we asked our listeners and some of our dads here at KPCC. Eli, I'll start with you. I know that you've got 3 little ones. Is it 6, 3?
3 and 10 months.
6, 3, and 10 months. So when we talk about early childhood development and dads, you're in the thick of it right now.
Absolutely.
So
I use a different word, but it's not safe for...
How did your perceptions change once you entered that world?
I mean, incredibly. And, I always knew I wanted to be a parent. I just wasn't sure what it exactly was going to be like. But for me, it really, I sort of reveled in it. I loved being a parent, so much so that I seem to having kids. But I just really enjoyed being a dad. And it sort of led me down the path of being a stay-at-home dad because not only did I feel fulfilled in it, but I also felt really good at it. I was like, wow, like I got this. I can handle this, which, a lot of dads sort of back away from it sometimes.
Yeah. Did you ever imagine yourself being a stay-at-home dad before it happened?
No, and there wasn't really, I didn't really know any stay-at-home dads. There weren't really any role models in my family or in my wife's family. In fact, it was kind of like a very odd thing, because it was sort of seen as the male as, going into work and, making money and coming home for dinner and that was about it. But I really... I sort of got introduced to there's a whole community of at-home dads. There's an at-home dad convention and an at-home dad network, and that's really how I kind of got into it. It's funny, I'm involved with the neighborhood council system in Los Angeles, if anybody is involved with that, and that's where I met one of the founders of the LA Dads Group. And he said, oh, yeah, you got to come out and join my group. And I'm like, whatever. Like, I just take my kids to the park and I do my own thing. I don't need, like, a group to do that with. But I sort of realized that, having opportunities to interact with other dads was really critical. And he kind of dragged me into the group. And I thought it was really cool. And so I started getting more involved. And here I am. And so just for those who don't know about LA Dads Group, we are a diverse group of dads, and the only requirement is that you want to be actively involved in your kids' upbringing.
Awesome.
And so, we accept dads of all types, married, single, gay, at home, working dads, and there's no dues, there's no membership. We just go out and we have fun dad events. We do Dad Night Out. We're going to do one after this down the street for dads only. Just to hang out and spend time with other dads. And then we do just dad and kid events, and then we do full family events.
Great.
And this is a really busy month because it's
Father's Day coming up.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that community aspect of it later. Alex, I want to go to you. You've got a daughter who's now 16, right? Before you had her, how did your perceptions change afterward?
Oh, man. Well, growing up and, growing up in a really impoverished side of Los Angeles in South Central LA, I mean, parenthood wasn't something that was, something that was planned for. It wasn't something that was really talked about. I mean, it was a situation where the environment was that a lot of the individuals that became parents because of the decisions that they made with their sensualities and sexuality. And so when I became a parent, it wasn't something that, my daughter's mom and I were thinking about and planning, and, we hadn't even finished school. I became a father when I was 19 years old. So, at the time, being a father simply meant that I now needed to shift my energy and my focus on what I wanted to do for myself, and I needed to make sure that I could take care of this precious little bundle of life that was completely and totally dependent on me and her mother, And so what's changed is that now I've grown into the role. I think that my daughter taught me how to be a man. My daughter taught me how to be a father. And then a lot of the lessons that I learned as a child myself came back to me when I started instructing her and teaching her. And, I feel blessed and fortunate that I have a good relationship with her. And it's partly because I chose to be involved. I chose to focus that time and attention, which was something that, again, in the environment and the circumstances that I grew up in, there's a lot of people that had kids around the same age that I did, but they chose not to be involved. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Your daughter taught you how to be a man.
My daughter taught me how to be a man, yeah.
Donald, I want to go to you. You run a group called Dad Project, and that's helping men all around LA County get involved with their children, their early lives. I think doing that, when I first talked to you, it was surprising to me that you are not yet a dad yourself.
Not just yet. A lot of pressure, though. You see it, man.
But you're running this group, and I want you to talk about why that was important for you to start doing this work.
For myself, tell you guys a little bit about myself. I moved here from Louisiana about 9 years ago to be closer to my dad. And it was right after Katrina, helping my family rebuild the home. I thought it was time for, as a man, it's time to get on, and do something different. And for me, it was important to move to California to be closer to my father. So when I moved here, I got the opportunity to work for a Head Start program in Inglewood, California, coordinating male engagement programs. And it just so happened, I'm working on a relationship with me and my dad. I'm running programs for fathers and their families. And me and my partner, Daniel, that's what the Dad Project stands for, Donald and Daniel, or Daniel and Donald, however you like to say it. But we felt like it was important for us to bring what we were doing at the Head Start out to the community. At first, we would get 5 or 6 dads. Next thing you know, we got 150 guys coming to color with their kids or build like some Home Depot project. So once we saw that, we were like, you know what, this is something that we have to share. And that's when we started the Dad Project.
Wow. And so it was really your relationship or lack thereof with your dad growing up that inspired you to, get other dads, to get that message to other dads that, to be involved, the difference that it made for you.
Yes, ma'am. And it was a trip, because I actually moved to California to pursue the medical field. And so when I started working at the Head Start, the passion met my purpose at that point, and I just kind of fell all the way into it, And ever since then, it's been a blessing,
That's great.
Yeah.
I wanted to, so we've kind of gotten into Donald and his relationship with his dad. Eli, when you think about your relationship with your own dad, is it very different from your role in your family? Or how does that play in how you think about fatherhood?
Wow. No, I have a really good relationship with my dad, and I saw him last weekend actually. And what was so nice was, my parents both told me that they were so proud of the way that I was raising my kids. And I think that means so much for a child to get that, that respect as well as recognition from your parents. And I think that's why I'm so kind of engaged as a dad, because, I think all of the stories that I hear, I mean, I get emails from dads who are just fighting to be involved in their kids' lives and struggling with it, because sometimes it's a real struggle, and they know that, just like Alex, it makes them a better man to be with their kids. And they're doing it for their kids. And really, I think that's, one of the big shifts when you become a parent is like your whole life really orients around that, I mean, even like your work, you're like rushing, I became so much more efficient at work because I was like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go spend time with my kids, right? Instead of, I'll hang out by the water cooler and maybe I'll go grab a drink afterwards or whatever. But I think that is so critical, and I think that's what we need to do is like provide opportunities for dads to feel comfortable. I mean, that was the whole reason that City Dads was put together, was because there was these two dads in New York who were stay-at-home dads in 2007 and 2008 when it was like all about moms, and they were showing up at these Mom and Me events, and they were the only dads, and they're like, wait, and they started having coffee with each other and like, well, there's two of us, this is a group, let's invite other dads. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And I think it's great like to have these, play groups with a diverse group, but there wasn't really anything at all anywhere in the country for dads just to be with other dads. So
yeah,
that kind of similar to my man Eli, right? So it's a similar thing with us with the Dad Project. Is that we really focus on education. We know the dads are going to be at the baseball games, the football games, the softball games. We want them to be just as excited about coming into the classroom, volunteering in the classroom, doing the homework, meeting the teachers, parent-teacher conferences. Very, very important, that connection with the father and the teacher. And really just change the culture of education, because when you go to ECE, what do you see? It's a lot of moms. A lot of moms, So with the Dad Project, we come into the schools and we really try to provide a safe space for the fathers to come and do things with their kids.
And when you don't have a good relationship with your dad, seeing other fathers involved, I think is helpful. And I always encourage dads to get involved from like the very beginning. Like when mom is going to, or your partner is going to like wellness visits with the doctor when they're pregnant, like you should be there too, because it starts then, and your kid can like hear you in utero, and it starts then. So it sets up a pattern so that when the baby's born, it's not like, oh, I'm a dad.
That's right.
When you talk to dads in your group about that role in education, which, as you said, can be kind of maybe not exactly what they're expecting. You think about the sports, you think about certain activities. Is there some convincing to do, or what do you share with them? What are the reactions when you talk about getting involved in the education?
That's funny you say that. We usually start our first group with our man cave or a barbershop, and we get all the guys together, just the guys, We playing music, it's real lively, get everybody comfortable. And then as soon as we turn the music off, it's like, all right, guys, we're here. We introduce ourselves as the Dad Project. And then we talk about the legacy of fatherhood. What are we gonna share with our kids? And how was our father in our home? And what are some things that we do different? Not if it's right or if it's wrong, but what do we do different? What do we do the same? But how can we make it better? And then we help the fathers understand that, hey, man, you can go out and make $1 million, but your legacy is your kids. That's the most important thing family and things like that. So your children are the most important, and that should come first.
Alex.
No, I appreciate you speaking about legacy, because I lost my father when I was 15 years old. I buried my dad a day before my 16th birthday, and so I've been a fatherless son since I was a teenager. And so when my daughter was born, then I thought about that. I thought about legacy, right? Is that my father wasn't around for me anymore because of circumstances that were completely outside of my control. And so when I began raising my daughter, I always carry the memory of my father with me. So whenever I think about situations, even something as simple as what extracurricular activity she wants to get involved, or what I want to consider for her to do, I always take my father's thoughts into consideration, and I have conversations with my father, and I ask him, and I, as best as I can think of what he would have said or what he would have wanted for me to do. And a lot of the decisions that I've made as a parent stem from those early years. So what you're saying is very true, is being active with your child from the very beginning, because I have no doubt that my father loved me. My father was very affectionate towards me. I was a kid that was always told that I was loved. I was always told that I was special. I was always told that I could be anything that I wanted to be in this world. And I never doubted that my father cared and believed in me. Mm-hmm. And so I've taken that, and similar to what you're saying, is like, how can I do the same things that were effective for me, but also how can I do things differently so that my daughter could benefit not just from the wisdom of her grandfather's memory, but also from the experiences that her father has gained throughout his 35 years of life, you know?
Yeah, that's great. So you were raising your daughter on your own, starting at what age?
Well, 19. So.
Well, how old was she when you were?
So when she was born when I was 19. Her mom and I stayed together until she was 4. And then, I consider it in my memory that I lost her because I became, her mom and I didn't work out. So I became weekend dad. Mm-hmm. And I went through a lot of tough socioeconomic issues. A fun fact about me is that I'm a DACA recipient. I'm undocumented in this country. So, having 2 college degrees but not being able to apply them because I couldn't legally work made it very difficult for me to be an effective, active parent in my daughter's life when it came to socioeconomics. But one thing that I did do is that I stayed involved from the educational aspect. I always knew that if I could stay involved through her schooling, then I would always have an active role in her life. And it wasn't until she graduated from elementary school that her mother and I came to a mutual agreement. We were adults about things. We never went to court. We never had to fight over custody. It was always a very mutual understanding that even though we didn't work out, we were going to be the best parents we could be for our daughter, and that the common interest was her. And so when she was old enough to decide that she wanted to live with me, it was like this huge thing that happened in our community, because it's Latinos, for some reason fathers are not supposed to raise little girls because there's something wrong with that, So I came under a lot of scrutiny, and my daughter's mother came under a lot of scrutiny, and they're like, how could you let him live with it? Like, how can you do that? That's your little girl. Oh my God, I would never let my baby daddy take my. So it was a big challenge. So from the age of 11 until now 16, she's lived with me full time for the last 5 years. And her mother's involved as much as she can, but she lives in Riverside County. So the commute, and she's married and she has a family of her own. She's got 3 other kids, and I'm fortunate because I only have to focus my time, energy, and resources on one, which is her, as opposed to having more kids.
Yeah, we got a comment from one of our listeners, and I think we have each talked about this before, but he said, I hate hearing dads as babysitters. We are more than that, and we're more than just a sports team coach. Right. That was Richard King who wrote in with that. So that really
dads can't babysit their own kids. I
mean,
we're parents, right? And you were half of this, of making of this kid.
Sure.
You've got to put in the work, and I think, dads always come up to me, new dads or dads to be, because we go out at a lot of events, and they're like, what do I need to get? Do I need to get this thing? Do I need to buy this thing? And I'm like, the only thing that your kid really needs is your love. Like, at the end of the day, they just need your love and support. And I love what you were saying, because it's just like, your job as a parent is to lift them up, right? Whatever they want to do, you're there to support them. And so whatever their passion is and whatever they want to do in life, your job is to empower them, to support them, to be there for them, and to love them. And the rest will come. Like, get a good baby carrier, have a diaper, and just go out into the world and have fun with them, because that's the that's the thing that they're going to remember the most is being with their parent, not all the stuff that you bought them.
That's
so.
right.
Yeah.
And just to piggyback off of what Eli said, we use this analogy, you know, when children are riding their bicycle and they fall off down the street, who's usually the first one on the scene with the alcohol, kissing boo-boos? That's usually mom, right? Mm-hmm. What's dad doing? Get up. Get up. You got blood on you? Lick it, wipe it off. It's all right, you know? And that's what our kids need. They need that unconditional love from the mothers, but that coaching and that self-esteem building from the fathers. Because that's what fathers are. They're life coaches. That's what we do.
Yeah. I realized just before this event that I hadn't actually asked my own dad that question about, how his ideas about fatherhood changed.
Hey, Mr. Neely, are you watching?
He's probably asleep. But my mother, I'm sure, is streaming from Maryland. Hello, Mother. So I asked him that question, and he said something that was interesting. I guess I sort of knew this, but that he hadn't really thought about being a father until he went to seminary. And this was after he had already had my 3 siblings. I wasn't born yet. And he realized at that time that he had never really thought about being a father. He was just like, I'm the breadwinner. I got to bring in the check for this. But he hadn't thought about the relationship aspect of it. So fortunately, I was the 4th child and was had a great relationship from the beginning. But he has this acronym that he likes to use, which is that MAN stands for Master at Nurturing. And that's not like a male-female thing, but just like mankind, master at nurturing. And then that's something that we all, have a role in, for whether we have our own children or not. And I just thought that's just my own personal tangent.
I'm going to use that now. Am I allowed to?
Yeah.
I'll credit your...
Yeah. Bill Neely.
Bill Neely.
Great. Well, we're going to continue talking, and in a moment we're going to bring up Darby Saxby, who does research about paternal health and how the kind of the science aspect of the relationships that parents and children have. But first, Alex, as we mentioned before, you are also a poet, and you have a poem that is about your kind of journey to fatherhood.
Yeah.
So we'd love for you to do that now.
Cool. I guess I'll just jump into it because it's pretty self-explanatory, and it's called The Decision of a Lifetime. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much. My future was a mirage of vapor thoughts elevated by paper planes. Plainly speaking, I was seeking currency, but my sight was plain. Searching for the mundane led me to the fast lane towards nowhere, where I was told to hurry up and wait. Stacks of crumbled white pages served as saving points for my scattered random lines. I preserved my life through narratives of clever rhymes, keeping my head in the clouds high off the smog of polluted LA skies. Using these pieces of papyrus that held the secrets within my iris, revealing them caused my demons to challenge me. Come on, Aner, fight us. I gambled my life with a glass pipe, glimpsed the great Osiris as I overdosed in my living room to the overture wail of the ambulance sirens. My siblings bore witness, my sister wept in silence as I convulsed with great violence. I have tasted defeat. Yet it was evident life wasn't meant to end for me just yet. Soon after, I received postal stationery stating I could be stationed at an educational institution, one of the oldest ones. In the same state where they signed the Constitution, I, Chino's oldest son, was given a way out the slums. Out of 48th and Vernon, out of dealing venomous poison, out of 2 for $3 tall cans of Budweiser and $5 chicken wing specials from the fish market, out of loose cigarettes dipped in formaldehyde, out of sleeping in Hyde Park, cracked out in a parked Chevy Impala, out of living in a converted closet, out of carrying a concealed weapon. My liberty was so close I could almost taste it. I could hear the cracked bell of freedom ringing. This wasn't an illusion. The only form of preparation required was to make high school graduation my next immediate conclusion. I was dumbfounded. I could study at a university. No one ever told me I could go to a university. Quite the opposite. The system isn't designed for little brown boys to get ahead, but I had white bread backing me. Therefore, it was a real possibility that I could honor father's memory, make mother proud of me, guarantee that their sacrifice of migrating away from their families wasn't just foolish vanity. If the boy can have a future, then our present is our willing collateral. I can see clearly now my parents' sacrificial offering. I was given a golden egg. My future suddenly had legs, and I ran straight into a pawn shop instead. For I scrambled the contents of the egg and mixed up my priorities, the old head said. For old news was the gifts God had given me, but this news was a shift that could save me, caused me to remove the noose I had placed over my neck in an effort to snap myself awake from the waking dream I slept walk since my father's wake. This opportunity would come to me free of charge, but I'm from the hood. Ain't nothing free of charge. There are always hidden fees by and large that have the tendency to break through and barge in right before you proclaim a win. Ironically, not an hour would flee before I received a piece of news that nearly made me spew my favorite auntie's chicken stew. The goddess of my underworld discovered life grew within her womb, for Hades confirmed that it wasn't a maybe. Plus sign on an EPT said a baby would soon drive a steer crazy, and now I had to choose. The fantasy of Ivy Leagues or the reality of a baby's needs. What's a farmer with fertile soil to damage seeds? I was a numbnuts who thought he had guts. Abortions are easy when your portion of the responsibility means coming up with the measly 370, but that's a fortune when you're 17. And when you're 18, it's statutory, even if your girlfriend gives consent because her parents didn't love her the way you can. And her mommy raises white children even on the weekends. And Papa never told her that he loved her because he stopped caring after the third sibling. And it feels good when the boy with the crooked smile and broken heart writes you poems about love and bright futures where you are the main character, and he teaches you about a language that only the heart understands but the ears know nothing of. Yet with all that insight, neither one thought of 8th grade sex ed, on how to properly put on a condom, and now I face the conundrum. How was I supposed to preserve my golden opportunity and continue living with impunity? Cash or credit is fine. Planned Parenthood don't mind. It's a short-term loan. I could pay it back in no time. I had access to the funds, but I was stuck. My conscience always has a way of knowing how to mess with me. I remembered an image from my dream, a dream of a pretty little girl that looked like me, whispered in my ear, "I love you, Daddy. Please give me a chance to love you, Daddy. I'm not scared to have you be my daddy. I choose you. Do you choose me, dear Daddy?" Suddenly, another image came over me. I could leave as an apprentice, keep in touch through handwritten sentences full of sentiment, watch Aileen grow up through photographs, brag to would-be friends about being a dad, to a phantom child that I would treat as a fad. I'd return 4 years later as an incompetent father who mastered his own ignorance, but missed out on a daughter that would have since forgotten what she never knew about me. I could become everything I hated about my father, justify doing the right thing in order to become a scholar, make my mother proud, quantifying her love through dollars, or I could give up the opportunity to learn from books, live the college life and become astute. I was torn between two worlds. I needed to get my life together. My father was dead, my mother was weathered. This decision of a lifetime would alter my future, so I made up my mind while in a drunken stone stupor. Passing the duchy to the left-hand side, I sighed, began to cry, told my best friend of my needing to sacrifice my future for a child that I wasn't ready for. I was a high school dropout moonlighting as a janitor. How and what in the world could I possibly offer her? I'm never getting out of the hood, dog. I sputtered between sobs. I ain't got no skills. I can't get a better job. Soon after, I enrolled in the School of Hard Knocks, began pulling all-nighters, traded books for changing diapers, worked 3 jobs and left the ciphers, lived with Haiti but didn't wife her, committed to 18 years. I was now a lifer. Dreams and goals consisted of covering the basics, food, clothes, and shelter. I made peace with it and faced it. Do you regret the choice, big dog? You let go of UPenn, big dog. Baby mama did you in, big dog. How were you sure Aileen would love you then, big dog? That's just it. I didn't. And now you're probably wondering if I regret my choice. Well, I traded a potential life of academic success in order to raise my princess with no guarantee I'd make it this far. But that child is the reason why I am rich beyond measure. This is my testimonial to how I gained my life's greatest treasure.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
The question that I was thinking, there's a lot in there about not only about your relationship, but your relationship with your dad and the other dads in the community. But you answered in the poem, no regrets. But I mean, do you ever think of what it would be like if you weren't there, if you hadn't had that relationship?
Yeah, I do. I mean, and my daughter and I, we like to play this game of like what would have happened. And we'll sit down and we'll start navigating through our lives and like, if this wouldn't have happened, this wouldn't have happened, and this wouldn't have happened, and this wouldn't have happened. So, I've thought about it, and I don't regret it because ultimately I am exactly where I need to be in life, in this world. And I'm a much better person because of the relationship that I have with my daughter.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Very beautiful. We are about to bring up our next guest. And before we do that, I want to play another video. This is of an experiment called the Still Face Experiment, which was first done in the 70s. And it's an experiment that reveals a lot about the relationship that infants have to their parents and attachment. But it wasn't until a couple of years ago that it was actually done with dads and with men and their infant children. So we're going to watch that before we bring up our next guest and talk about a little of the science.
What we've learned over the years is that babies are much more capable than we initially imagined, but they're also much more vulnerable. And in Edtronic's still face experiment, we get to see both in a very short period. We see the baby and the dad playing together in their routines. There are things that they know about each other and things that they do together, and it's fun. And then we ask the dad to turn away, and when he turns back, to keep his face completely still and not respond to the baby. And the results are almost immediate, and they're devastating. The baby looks to the dad and tries to get the dad to get back into those games. Hey, we were just playing just a minute ago, weren't we? We were having fun. What's going on? And then the baby starts to get frustrated when that doesn't work. So she'll have to look away and look around the room and find something else and then look back and say, now can we play? And within 3 minutes, the baby has really dissolved. She is trying to get out of the chair. She's uncomfortable. She's reaching out to dad. She's crying. And then we ask the dad to turn away again. And when he turns back, to go back to being regular dad. And it's a joyous reunion. They get back into their routines, the things that they do together, the things that they were just doing 3 minutes before. And the baby settles down and gets back to the comfort zone that she's developed with the dad. What we see in the still face experiment is how able the child is to initiate and be part of the relationship between the father and the child, but also how much she depends on that relationship in order to keep an even keel. And when she's grounded and comfortable, she can explore the world. She can meet new people. She can try new things, and she's got that safe base that she can always rely on. And there's a trust level there. We can only begin to imagine what it's like for babies whose life is like that 3 minutes all of the time. And they don't get that responsiveness, and they don't get any help getting back to an even keel. And the results can be very tragic. They can have trouble trusting people, they can have trouble relating to people, and they can have trouble being calm enough so that they can explore the world and take part in the world. So we know that those initial relationships, that initial responsiveness and interaction between the father and the baby are keys to the baby's success as a child and as an adult.
Yeah, so that was from Project ABC, the Children's Institute. Google it, Still Face for Dads. Everyone okay? I like cried the first time I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine. Like, that must have been so hard being
hard for them to do.
That.
Yes, there's
Yeah.
another video where the dads talk about how they had such a hard time keeping
sure.
still face.
And I think it's so important now, like in today's world, because we're all in our phones all the time right now.
Absolutely.
And looking at a screen
makes you think.
Right, and we're distracted by the buzzes that we feel in our pocket, right? And they've done studies about it being addictive, and that just shows that when you're in your screen and doing that when you're with your kid, it really impacts them. Which is a reminder that my kids are watching. So hi, Cal and Lucy. It's time for you guys to go to bed.
Shout out.
Right?
Okay, well, we're going to bring up our next guest, Darby Saxby. Welcome to the stage, Darby. She is an assistant professor of psychology at the University of Southern California, USC, in the house. Hi. Welcome, Darby, to the stage. And I think that video is so powerful. I think, Eli, you said it earlier, that really, that love and that attachment, those early experiences, making sure your children feel grounded and comfortable, that is really important. And that video is really it exemplifies that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because the still face is this classic paradigm from the 70s that's been done with moms, and there are tons of studies that look at how babies respond to this. But this is the first time that it's been tried with dads, and I think what it really demonstrates is that dads are just as important as attachment figures as moms are. Babies need that secure, stable base. And whether that sort of reciprocity, that kind of dynamic interaction that helps to create that attachment bond, whether it's coming from a dad or from a mom, it's still something that it's really essential for babies.
Yeah. So that attachment is the same, that's very important. What are some of the ways that relationship can be different with dads, with men? Yeah,
so there's some evidence that, we know that fathers are really important for child development. And it's not just that they're sort of substitute moms, it's that they actually have a kind of unique repertoire of play. So Donald had the example of what happens when a kid falls off their bike, right? And so there's some evidence to support that idea that when moms, you can imagine a toddler learning to take their first steps, and the mom might be just kind of a few inches behind, sort of making sure the baby doesn't fall. And the dad might encourage more boundary pushing, more physically exploratory play, more kind of active pushing limits, that really helps build confidence and self-esteem in kids. I mean, of course, every dad is different and has a different parenting style, but there is, from studies that have kind of compared mother play and father play, it seems like there are some distinct features that make dad's contribution really unique.
Yeah.
Just to piggyback, there's a lot of funny YouTube videos of dads doing so-called babysitting with their kids, but they're doing all kind of crazy stuff at the house, like the one with the cheerleader, the National Father Institute. Did you see that one?
No.
Where they're doing the cheer and different things like that. But there's a lot of funny things that support that as well.
Well, and you think about like the dad, with an infant might swing the baby over his head, and there aren't a lot of it's hard to find moms that do that, So there really are some sort of ways that dads can help kids test their physical limits that are kind of unique.
So when we talk about the health side, and we hear, as I said before, we hear a lot about maternal health and prenatal health, which is so important when something is growing inside of you. And there's been more awareness and education about postpartum depression. You have done some research looking at that on the paternal side and how hormone levels can change there as well. So I'd love you to talk about that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I study the transition to parenthood. So I, in my current study, I recruit couples that are expecting their first child, and we follow them across the first year postpartum. So if any expectant parents are interested in participating in a study at USC, get in touch. But we look at sort of how that transition is challenging for both mothers and fathers. And so when you think about sort of postpartum depression, the first image that pops into your head might be of a mom who's down. But in fact, we know that the sort of early postpartum months are a high-risk time for depression in fathers as well. So prevalence of mood disorders in new dads is about twice that of the general population. Not just mood disorders, but sleep patterns get dysregulated, social relationships change, identity changes, right? Alex has talked to you guys have all talked about that. So it's a time that a lot is going on, and I think because the changes are so visible in moms, they tend to be more obvious to us. But in fact, fathers' hormones also change. So we know that there are maternal hormones that support pregnancy, but there's also some evidence that in new dads, testosterone levels drop. Cortisol levels might rise. Prolactin, which is a hormone that supports breastfeeding in moms, also appears to change in fathers who have contact with infants. And so all of those hormones might be linked to mood disorder risk and some of the other things that are happening around that time.
Eli?
Yeah.
And that, I mean, and your poem kind of really brought that up, is that I'm part of this there's this huge dad blogger network. There's like 1,200 dads. We've got this Facebook group, and we're blogging all the time. And really the hardest thing was sort of breaking that stigma around male depression, which a lot of men, not just dads, really repress. And so this blogger community is this huge supportive community of dads who, push each other and say, look, I wrote about it, you wrote about it, we're going to support each other, and we're going to come together and talk about it and be open about it. I think it's cathartic, really, to write it down and put your feelings on paper. And, I can't write as eloquently as you, so I blog in my own sort of funny, quirky kind of policy wonky kind of way. But every year we have this dad conference, Dad 2.0, which is like a dad blogger conference. And we have this event where we go and we get up on the mic, and dads read their blog posts, and it's just an emotional roller coaster, because you hear these stories of these struggles of dads being parents, and it's beautiful, and it's amazing, and there's this whole sort of community. So if you feel alone, like, what I encourage you to do is like find this community, search and write yourself. It can be or not even write, like YouTube or whatever. I mean, I know dads who just do Facebook or Instagram.
Was it hard for you or others that in that community to push past that and get comfortable putting your emotions out there? I mean, is there any...
Yeah, definitely, because you have this like digital footprint, and you sort of wonder what the reaction is, right? Is it going to be like crickets, like complete crickets of like, oh,
it's just you.
Yeah, it's just me. Or is there going to be this sort of supportive community, and there's this great dad that I interact with that he's got a group called That Dad Chat, and he's just brutally honest about postpartum depression. We both have 10-month. He has a 1-year-old. I have a 10-month-old, and it's so important, not just for the dads. Actually, it's so important for the moms to see that too, right? Because we sometimes hide our emotions from our partners, and it's so critical for the partner to see, oh man, like this. Maybe that's why he's, my partner's acting this way, and oh, maybe I should be more cognizant of that. So I think it's kind of helpful in that as well.
Well, I also think that it's a great thing that we have access to the internet the way we have it today, because when I became a dad, none of what you're saying was possible for me, because we didn't have access to those groups, and I think that I feel fortunate that I've always been an artist, so I had the perfect excuse, right? Is that I'm a poet, right? Or I'm trying to be a poet, so I'm writing my thoughts and my feelings down, which was, for me, was self-therapeutic. I did it because it was a way for me to escape. But what that taught me, especially being a father to a little girl, was that it was okay for me to be vulnerable. That it was okay for me you're saying that testosterone levels drop in males, which I can think back and go, oh, no wonder I started crying a lot. Like in that first year, like I would look at my daughter. Something interesting happened that reminded me recently, because I have a year-old nephew. When I first met my daughter, I remember I held her and I started to cry, and I figured, okay, well, that's what parents do. You meet your child, you're overwhelmed with emotion, and then you cry. But when I met my nephew for the first time, he was maybe like 2 weeks old, and I looked at him and he opened his eyes, he smiled, and his pupils were huge, and I just remember I connected with him, and then it was like this eternal moment, and then I was just flooded with emotion, and I just started sobbing and crying, and in that moment I knew that I would protect him and that I would love him and I would cherish him. Because he was precious to me, but that thought didn't come to me until after I was able to physically connect with him, which was, I don't know if you guys study that, if it's something that is.
Yeah, I would love to study that. Yeah, I want more of that to study. That's yeah. But I mean, it's true. It's we survive as a species because we care for our children, our infants, right? Babies are born essentially not quite ready for prime time. Like, we have these big heads, and the trade-off of that is that we come out and we need help feeding.
Fourth trimester.
We need help sleep. Right, exactly. Fourth trimester, right? So babies aren't totally ready to go, and so they require all of this nurturing, all of this care. And it makes sense that that's, evolutionarily supported by our biology. And we think about moms having that biology that's going to support that nurturing work, and it's very hard work with an infant. But fathers come equipped with a lot of those same hormonal mechanisms that are going to help, just as you experience that really powerful bond. Yeah. Our species wouldn't thrive if there wasn't a lot of overlaid processes that help facilitate that.
I know that's one of the most important things for us at the Dad Project is for men to be able to share and have that opportunity to be emotional. Because I'm sure every guy in here has heard these 3 little words growing up. Something happens, be a man. Be a man.
Boys don't cry.
Or boys don't cry. Like, what does that mean? And as we get older, we have this concept of be a man. When things are happening, you're not supposed to cry. Suck it up, chuck it up. But that's not cool, because our kids need to know that we have feelings too. Most importantly, they need to know that we feel that way about them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we're here for them. So that's one of the things that we really try to drive home. Hug your kids, kiss your kids. If your dad didn't do it to you, do it for your kids, because it's very, very important that they see that.
But I think too, at the same time, like maybe the reason there hasn't been so much research is the bar is so low for dads. Like, we could do anything, and it's like, oh yeah, great job. Like, I was taking my kids to school the other day because my wife had something to do in the morning, so I took all 3 kids to school, and like, I had 2 moms come up to me being like, oh, you're so brave. Would those moms have gone up to another mom with 3 kids? I see this poor mom every day with 3 kids. She is dressed ready for work. She's got her hair done, her makeup, and I just want to go up to her and give her a hug. And I'm like women, and this is something we see a lot. We had a conversation about this last week in the mom community. Is like, you have to there's these perfect pictures of your life, and the meals are made when everybody gets home, and all this stuff, and dads just have to put a t-shirt on and go outside, and they're good. But we set the bar so low for dads, and I think that's both a disservice to their partners and a disservice to their dads, because we should be setting the bar higher and saying look, you're a partner in this too.
That's a great point. I want to jump back to you, Darby, because we have some more research. Speaking of research, we don't have that much, but we do have some. So we want to make sure that people know about it. So you mentioned a study that you have underway now that's looking at, this is brain scans, right, of first-time fathers. What are you hoping to find there?
Yeah, so in my current study, we're scanning fathers. They're putting them in the neuroimaging scanner when they're expecting their first child, so they're not yet parents. I mean, they are parents. They're expectant parents. But then we scan them again when the infant is about 6 months old. And so we're really interested in neuroplasticity. To what extent does the parenting brain change? And so looking at both the structure of the brain and also the function of the brain. So we're looking at, for example, how do dads respond to infant cry sounds? How do they respond to images of infants? And we're wanting to see whether some of those areas of the brain that respond to that stimuli might be dynamic, might either undergo gray matter growth and sort of increase in volume. So there's very limited evidence that in moms, the brain undergoes some reorganization and change in structure over the transition to parenthood. And we're wanting to replicate that and see if the same kinds of processes exist in fathers.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you've also written a paper looking at, what we'll call the dad bod. And some of the
demonstrated here tonight.
Some of the weight gain that can happen in that transition to parenthood, and I'd love for you to just share a little bit of that.
Yeah, that's right. So we think about weight gain, sort of postpartum weight gain and weight retention, again, as sort of being things that happen to moms, because we tend to see that moms expand during pregnancy, and then many moms, myself included, struggle to get the baby weight off. There's actually some evidence that fathers gain weight over the transition to parenthood as well. So there's been some research that finds that fathers on average are about 14 pounds heavier than non-fathers. And the sort of, if you look at trajectories of weight gain, there tends to be an inflection point around the transition to parenthood. And, part of that might just be fathers gain weight along with their pregnant partners. And so there's some sort of changes in daily habits, but it's also sleep. We know sleep is really important for maintaining a healthy weight. It's also exercise, it's stress levels. It might be some of the hormonal changes like testosterone and cortisol that are linked with body composition. So I just wrote sort of a theory paper trying to look at what are some of the mechanisms that might encourage weight gain or weight retention in fathers across this specific point over the transition to parenthood. But there's very, very little research in this area, because the public health research that looks at obesity and weight gain in men doesn't consider fatherhood status, right? There's a whole research literature on weight trajectories in women who become mothers and how trajectories shift around parenthood, but people don't typically think about men being fathers in the same way, as that being a life event that changes physical health. But there's some really compelling theory to think that it might.
Yeah. And as you mentioned there with the weight gain, but also in kind of all aspects of the transition to parenthood, looking at fathers, there's not that much research. And, in my work, I talk to Department of Health, sometimes it's always maternal child, it's maternal child. There's no paternal language, even from the policy side of things. So when you're looking at the research and the kind of the dearth of evidence there, how do you think about that as a researcher, and what makes you want to do this research?
Yeah, well, as a researcher, I'm excited that there's a gap in the research because it suggests that there's a need for more research.
Yeah.
But it's also frustrating, and I think it's not just on the policy side, it's also the way research is funded. So NIH tends to fund maternal child research, and so fathers and looking at men's health in conjunction with fatherhood doesn't sort of get the same, it's not conceptualized in the same way. So I think fathers end up missing from a lot of the studies on parent-child processes. And you said at the beginning, a lot of the work on dads has really just looked at father presence versus father absence. But we can do a lot better, right? Because we know that the quality of father involvement also matters for child outcomes. And kids who have fathers who are engaged, who are active, who are supportive, who are involved in education, we know across the board those kids have better outcomes. They have better school outcomes. They have better emotional outcomes. So there's really a strong need for just more sort of empirically well-constructed research to kind of inform our knowledge of what it means to be a father and how fathers contribute.
Yeah.
And we've been doing, there's been a big shift on this in terms of, and we've been doing a lot of advocacy around paternal leave. And the state looked at, California has the country's first paid family leave program in the country. It was established about 12 years ago now. And they did an analysis 2 years ago, and they found that most dads didn't think it applied to them. They just thought it was for the mom. And so we worked with State Assemblyman at the time, Jimmy Gomez. He's now a congressman, to expand that because there was a lot of inequity about it as well. Parents who were earning over a certain amount were taking more of it, and low-income parents weren't because it wasn't enough of their salary. So they expanded it. So now we have like the best paid, or one of the best paid family leave in the country, but dads still, there's sort of this stigma about dads taking time off. But I mean, you know, as we saw in the video and we saw with the research, like it's so critical, especially in those first couple of weeks, to have that like bond with a child. And so like I tell dads all the time, like that is your leave, like take advantage of it, use it. And it's so critical and so important for bonding with your kid.
Yeah. We're going to open it up to the audience in just a second here. If you have questions or comments, or bringing the lights up. But Darby, I just wanted to ask you, what is there kind of a dream research that you wish existed, or what do you want people to study? If there's anyone watching or in the audience who could study this, what would you want to see?
Oh wow, that's a really, really great question. I mean, I think longitudinal research, so following families over time, looking from prenatal and sort of across the lifespan, so we can see at what points does father involvement matter the most, right? So you mentioned like those first few weeks and the role of parental leave, and I think that makes a lot of sense, but we don't necessarily have research on what are those critical windows for bonding, and are those different for fathers than they are for mothers. There's also evidence that social support in pregnancy, right, like moms having a supportive partner, that's linked with better birth outcomes, it's linked with better postpartum outcomes. So getting dads involved prenatally might be really important, but there isn't a lot of work that's following men from pregnancy and beyond. When we think about the research on prenatal processes, it's typically focused on women who are pregnant. Yeah. So let's try to figure out, sort of starting from before a man welcomes a baby, what are the things that might motivate his involvement?
This research is so critical to moving the needle on so many issues. Yeah. Okay, we have Daphne is going around with a microphone here, so if you just want to raise your hand, I see someone in the front.
Again, I love that there's a dad in the back who's rocking his kid to sleep.
Aww, beautiful.
Yeah, living it.
So I wanted to ask you guys about depression after you have a child. So, there's been more research about postpartum depression for women, that it seems to be related to not having so much social support. And of course that can be the case if there's like a single father, but what do you think are some of the causes of postnatal depression for men? And you guys mentioned maybe not being able to express some of your emotions, but I just want to get some more insight from you guys on that.
Yeah, Eli, you spoke a bit about that earlier. Donald, do you have any insights about that? Do you hear dads talking about that in your groups?
What we get a lot of is a lot of guys are coming with their kids, but they're like, I have my kid, she's 3 years old or she's 2 years old. I just don't know what to do with her. What should I do? What is age appropriate? So that's what we see a lot of, and that's why we do with our programs. We start with the barbershops, but then we tell them bring their kids. And then we'll do something based on literacy, STEAM, arts and math, music. And we show them the different things that they could do at home with just regular items that they can bond with their kid and give them that confidence, because that's what we really want, is confidence as fathers. Because, I say, the moms, they have that really strong relationship with the child because they held them for 9 months. And as a father, we're the first stranger in that child's life. So sometimes some dads are more confident than others. Some guys are like, I don't know what to do. Like when they bring home the baby, like, where should I put it, or, So it's really about just helping guys understand that, hey, you're a dad. This is your child. You should be confident, and we show them some things that they can do at home to strengthen their own parenting
and
styles.
It's not uncommon that dads can really struggle early on when the baby's really, newborn, because, like you said, the mom's has had a 9-month head start in forming that bond, and for fathers they're sort of playing catch up, and they can feel kind of more alienated, like they're strangers. They're not sure what to do. They don't feel like they have that kind of innate repertoire. The mom maybe is breastfeeding, so she has a really important role to play in sustaining the infant's life. So I think intervening early is really important. I also did a study looking at the role of hormones in fathers' postpartum depression. So I found that dads lower testosterone around the transition to parenthood, which has been found in a number of epidemiological studies, was linked with greater risk of postpartum depressive symptoms in those men. So that potentially normative drop in testosterone might also increase the risk to men of developing mood disorder symptoms. Although one interesting twist in that study is that I found that women whose partners had lower testosterone actually had lower risk of postpartum depression, so that it might be protective for moms to have dads who are potentially more nurturing or have that kind of hormonal support to be more involved, but it can put dads at greater risk. So it's a really sort of complex hormonal trade-off in the family. So we don't know a lot about the role of biology in paternal postpartum depression, but I think that's an area where more research is needed.
Great.
I mean,
yeah, just quickly.
From a personal perspective, I think that part of my depressive stage when I first became a parent was the lack of education and the lack of skills, right? I didn't, like what you were saying, like, what do I do with this child? I remember, my baby wouldn't stop crying, right? And so her mom and I decided, well, let's try to have the baby sleep with us. And that worked, like the first 2-3 nights. And then one night I was sleeping and all of a sudden I felt my chest moving. And I was like, what? And I was roused awake and my body was on top of my child. And I was like, oh my God. And, she started crying. Never again. So, I had to learn to, teach myself to just stay up and take shifts and turns. And so I think the depression for me was the fear of not knowing and the fear of being ill-equipped in my mind and not having the resources. If I had organizations like yours, if I had access to the research that you two do, I think that would have been something that would help me, because the Lamaze classes were great, and they teach us how to hold the baby doll, but when the baby doll is a human living, breathing thing. So, I think a lot of my depression was in just trying to learn what I needed to know so that I could be a dad.
And that's exactly why we have the group, is because oh, wait, that happened to you too? You went through that too? Oh man, me too. And just sharing that experience is so helpful.
And that's so regular for moms, but this is kind of new territory. Okay, next question.
So this question relates to millennial attitudes around parenting and fatherhood in general. So it seems like there's this may come across as a surprise to some people, but it seems to me that a lot of millennials these days, people in my age group in their mid-20s and earlier, seem to have a very negative attitude toward becoming a parent in general. They view it as purely a burden and not something that actually is transformative or beneficial. They don't view this responsibility as a positive thing, and in Europe and Japan over time, this has resulted in average ages of initial parenthood going up, which researchers have said the positive side of that is that people are having children at greater ages, which is better for child outcomes. But on the other hand, there seems to be an inherent negative posture that this is a burden rather than an actual a thing that a parent would want to have. So what do you, for the entire panel, the academic as well as the fathers in the panel, what do you think about future attitudes going forward in parenting in this country in particular? Because it seems to be following an international trend, but also it has huge implications about what parenthood and what fatherhood is going to be in the next 20 to 30 years.
Yeah, sounds like another good area to study.
Right, totally. Well, I'm an older millennial, so I guess I still count. But I think there's been this real sort of shift a little bit. There was this sort of if I have a kid, it's going to hurt my career, it's going to slow it down or reverse my career. And that sort of, that started to shift in 2008 a little bit with the recession, which some called the man session, because there was all these men who became unemployed, and the families had to make this decision of who's gonna well, okay, you got laid off, maybe you should be at home. And so we've actually seen a jump in stay-at-home dads. It's doubled in the last 10 years of the number of stay-at-home dads. And I think, there's starting, I think, to be this understanding or realization that dads can do this too, and that dads can be at home, and that they can go back to work as well. I was at home and now I'm back at work. So I understand that, but I also feel like there's now, and also now what you're seeing, particularly in the tech industry, and I think the tech industry is really driving this, is they're not able to recruit particularly women, but just young men as well, without providing some sort of paternity or maternity leave. And so I think that's shifting the marketplace as well in the job world, because there's really nothing out there if you look at it, and they're starting to become that, and more companies are talking about it. Coca-Cola, I think, just did it. There's all kinds of companies that are doing it now, and so I think there's starting to be a realization that parenting is actually healthy for people and for the workplace. So.
And I would say it could be a misconception. It could be a maturity thing as far as being younger and wanting to have kids younger, depending on, I think, the culture and the society that you're around as well. You know, I say that because I have a younger brother, he has 2 kids, and they started having their kids in their 20s. You know, for them, that was important to them, you know, having a family, different things like that. And I think it's just, it's more so like when people say when you have a kid, your life is over, or, oh, no, man, you better wait till you're 40, man, wait till you're 50 if you can. You know, there's like, because once you have kids, man, you can't go here, you can't do this, you can't do that, when that's not true. You know, I think you start living more once you have kids. You know, you get to relive those days of your own childhood. You know what I mean? But they don't tell you that. You only see it from the outside, the diapers, the babysitting, the driving around, the dirty car, you know. So I think it can be just a misconception, a maturity thing. And I think it just all depends on who you're around and what you're around.
One thing, though, I'll say that I think fuels some negativity around parenting, particularly in the U.S. You know, Eli, you just cited some examples of companies that are offering more parental leave, but in fact, the U.S. is a total outlier when it comes to paid parental leave. We are the only industrialized country, right, that doesn't offer. So I think the other 2 are Papua New Guinea and Suriname, and we're the only other country that doesn't offer any kind of paid parental leave that's guaranteed. And 1/4 of new moms in the U.S. go back to work within 2 weeks of having an infant, which is sort of physically impossible. And many dads, right, California, we're a lucky exception, but many dads get no paternity leave whatsoever. And in a lot of countries, there are much more progressive policies. So I think millennials are accurate in thinking that it's going to be very challenging to balance their lives with parenting, because we don't have that sort of public support of parenting and early childhood. And even just, you know, public spaces. Like, I visited family in Sweden a couple years ago, and everywhere you go, there's a diaper changing area and a public park with kid-friendly places to play. We don't, you know, kids can be in restaurants. We don't necessarily have that kind of family-friendly culture. And so I think millennials are picking up on a certain hostility to families that unfortunately I think is a property of this country.
Too. I mean,
the
cost of daycare and childcare has gone through the roof. And
childcare costs more than college.
It's a big part of my
unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So. I want to get to quickly, Alex.
I just think that it also has to do with your community. I mean, you know, I'm an actor, and so my community consists of artists, and I'm probably the only parent in my community, a group of friends. And the reason why is because most, if not all, of the people that I associate with who are dear close friends, they've chosen their careers. They've chosen to work towards their goals and not forego parenting, but they understand that in order for them to quote unquote make it, right, they need to be able to exercise all of their resources and their time and their energy towards making it, and having a child does seem to be an obstacle that will slow them down or prevent them from reaching that goal, especially if you want to be an actor in such a competitive field. That's all.
Okay, next question.
First and foremost, I want to tell you that I appreciate all of you being out here today. It makes me feel like I am a wonderful dad.
Oh, thank you for being here.
Because I do so much.
That's right.
Thank you. You know, I happen to volunteer a great deal at my school, and I'm a full-time dad, like you know, several of you guys. And I just wanted to point out something that happens too, that when you happen to be the dad that happens to be on campus, that you in a certain way become a dad to a lot of the other kids. I can't tell you how many trips I've gone to where the kids, especially some of the boys that do not have a constant father figure, they gravitate towards the father that happens to be there. And I've held so many hands over the course of the years, because when there isn't one, you kind of default to that. And I always thought that other dads would have an issue with that, and I found that a lot of them don't. They got 9 to 5, and they can be there, and they're very appreciative when you take in that role. So I just wanted to point that out. The other thing that I wanted to discuss is I happen to do a lot of translation for my school district, and I find myself in a lot of IEPs, individualized educational programs. And oftentimes, there's a lot of children with disabilities in these meetings, or the parents are there for to deal with the disability. And I'm going to say 8 times out of 10, it is the mom that happens to be there. It is the mom that is in touch with the doctors and the physicians and the therapists and everybody that's involved. And oftentimes, the dads are not about. And so when it comes to research, it would be, mental illness, disability of all kinds is such a big thing that's occurring in our nation. Maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you've had with, hopefully everybody has healthy kids, but when you don't, how do you cope with that? Thank you.
I just want to say I appreciate you because when my father died, I was basically adopted by my community, right? I have mentors. I was fortunate enough that I have these 2 great mentors that started mentoring me when I was 16 years old, and they saw me through college. They saw me through the birth of my daughter. I mean, and because of them, I was able to, get out of school debt-free. But and it wasn't like they said, I'm going to adopt you, but what they did was that they became the constant male figures in my life, whether it was through picking me up every other weekend and taking me to the park, or paying for a college class, or doing things that a father is supposed to do. I was fortunate enough that there's individuals like you out there in the community that through emails, through phone calls, through visits, they've been able to help and guide me. So I'm grateful, because we need more of that. And as a parent, I come to find that my daughter has a lot of friends that don't have male figures in their lives. And so, I'm considered the cool dad, because I'm the kind of dad that's like, oh, your friend wants to come too? Okay, let's all hang out. And I treat them like people, like individuals, not like, subordinates or people that are less than because they're younger than me, So great respect for that. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to get
Thank you for sharing. I think because I see a lot of that with the education system. I think it's just the culture of the system. Because when the parents, they go to sign up their children for school, who's the first name they ask for? Mom's name. When they send something home, give that to your mom. Give that to your mom. And we've been seasoned or cultured to do that. And that's one thing that we really try to change, especially when we come into a new organization and we're going to run a fatherhood program. We want all the literature to say mother and father on the top. We want his name on the top of everything. Give this to your dad. Put him on the list. Let him be visible,
Raise the bar on fatherhood.
Raise the bar, When we come into a program, if there's no pictures of dads, that's why they're not coming,
Great.
Hello. Thank you so much for coming here, and dads and doctor presenting here. I'm excited to hear this about including dads and moms, and I go to Kaiser, and on the website there's a couple pictures of moms with their kids, and then there's a picture of a man holding his arm on his apparent wife, and then she's holding the kid. And I complained to Kaiser. I wrote about it.
Oh, wow.
I said I want to see dads in there, because I see a lot of dads in the community doing things, and they were receptive, but they didn't change the website yet.
Not yet.
Yet. I'm going to go back. And so I have 4.5-year-old twins, a boy and a girl. I finally got up to 50% custody. And the court uses words like, you get visitation. So I'm a visitor. I'm a visitor to my children. And there's a primary parent. And I guess I'm a secondary kind of afterthought. And so it's been very frustrating, and it's very exciting to hear a psychologist at a university getting grant money to study fathers. And I just wonder how you came upon that. Is there backlash? Do you get, from women's groups, or how does that work with you, and how did you get into that?
Yeah, so I luckily have not encountered a ton of backlash, although I'll say when my postpartum depression study came out that looked at testosterone and dad's postpartum depression, New York Times did a story about it, which I was, of course, thrilled about. And they got people, they had some pushback to the article where people were saying, well, you can't talk about men having postpartum depression because it really... it's such a big deal in women, and don't just make it into like something that happens to men too, right? Like we have to focus on fixing this issue in moms first, and moms need more resources and more attention, and you're just sort of diverting the focus. And I'm sympathetic to that argument in some ways. I mean, I think it's really important to talk about postpartum depression in women. I also think it's important to talk about postpartum depression in men, right? I think it's important to talk about depression in everyone. And one thing that we know is that if a woman has postpartum depression, her partner is also more likely to have depressive symptoms. Men who have depressive symptoms are more likely to have partners with depressive symptoms. So, these couple level processes work together. And, women's risk might be increased if the man is also struggling. So I think we really need to think about the family system, and that includes families where, parents aren't living together. It's still a family system, and look at how those pieces work together and not just decide that men are less important.
Great. Next.
So first of all, thank you guys. Thank you so much for this. Thank you to KPCC.
Thank you for being here.
No sweat. A night out. So the answer to the question of why do millennials think it's a burden to become a parent is because it is. They're not dumb. They're paying attention. Do the math. You saw the little kids in the 3-minute drill. The math is 100 hours. 100 hours of labor per week to provide parental presence with a child. That's what it takes. That's what we do, And I think all the Shrek and all the anxiety and all the, oh my God, my life just went away. All that is, it sloughs off us. That's the low-hanging fruit. That's what people see. But I think what maybe we haven't really nailed yet tonight is the overwhelming, heart-exploding satisfaction of being able to give that to somebody. I'm coming to the end of my run. I became a stay-home dad in '96,
Wow.
and my kids are 19 and 22, and so pretty soon, and it's okay with me. I'm pretty happy about it. But at the same time, I've had a lot of time to ask myself, what was it about? Because I can feel the satisfaction, but how do you express it? And it seems like it was just the world's greatest exercise in giving and receiving love. And in terms of the satisfaction that I've got out of it now that I come to the end of my run is I have 2 kids, and the 4 of us, we have built a unit that it's impregnable. We are a freaking force of nature. The bonds that hold us together and the strength and the passion that we as a group and individually project out into the world is amazing. And I had no freaking idea that this is what I was doing.
Oh, that's lovely.
I was as lost as they come, and fell into it by utter accident.
Yeah.
And made it up one day at a time as we went.
Well, that's really beautiful. And I think when we talk about, thank you so much for sharing that. When we talk about, kind of reframing the conversation, I think, speaking about the positives, speaking about the love side of it is important.
I think what's so important about what we're doing is at LA Dads and City Dads, we're not trying to diminish the role of moms and motherhood. Like, as you said, it's a full-time job, 100 hours a week, right? It's about uplifting dads and being like, you will gain so much from being a parent. And, oh, by the way, this is great for mom, too, because, like, if she has a few less hours that she's doing laundry and changing diapers and making food and all this stuff, it means that she can take care of herself and do the things that she wants to do, or your partner wants to do as well. So I think it's all about being positive about this and uplifting dads.
Great. I want to just try to get another one in before we wrap here, but something quickly, Donald.
I was just going to say, if you notice, if you're watching movies and TV, you're starting to see more dads take leadership roles. Like, what's the movie Taken? I think it's 5 of them. The dad saving his family in all 5 movies, you know? Even in Barbershop 3, if you ever had a chance to see Barbershop 3, it's about the father and his son.
Yeah.
You see the Toyota commercials, the dads are driving the vans with the DVD players and all the kids hopping out. So society is starting to see how important it is for fathers to be more engaged. And it's just time for us to get involved and get with it.
Nice. Okay. And you've got a little one on your back there, too, as you're asking this question.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Cecil Howell. I'm a single dad. I have 3 kids. 2 of them are here. One is at a soccer camp. I think I guess for me, it strikes me as kind of odd that in 2018 we're having a conversation about how relevant dads are. I mean, dads have been around since the beginning of time. Why is this a mystery? For me, it's not a mystery because I have a dad who is still a dad. He's the guiding light in my life, and I know that without his daddiness, I would be a completely different person. And I think that what really needs to happen is that fathers, I guess we don't really need to remake dads more than dads have to not abdicate their power and their position. I think that being a part-time father is, I don't know, you cannot give a kid the same thing part-time as you can full-time any more than you can a job. And simply, a father's vibration is different. A father's voice is different. I mean, if your mom says, hey, stop it, it's different than your dad saying, hey, stop. It's just different. Yeah. And kids hear it different, and they feel it different. And you can't outsource a relationship. And I think that the most important thing that any father can do, to piggyback off of what Eli had said about an hour ago, is your presence. There's no money, there's no vacation, you can't outsource it to TV, you can't outsource it to mom, to grandparents, no one. You have to be there. And so I think what needs to happen is that there needs to be a reconfiguration inside men as to what fatherhood is. And we need to claim that, and we need to be there. If it means making less money, make less money. Simple as that.
That is a beautiful note. Thank you, Cecil. Thank you for being here. I'm glad you could be here. We were emailing, and I'm glad you could make it. We are about to wrap up here, but we got a question from someone online that I just want us to address briefly here. Pina Hernandez says, what resources did you feel you needed to help you know more about raising your child, feeding a child, developmental questions? Were there resources you went to, if you just want to answer that quickly? I mean, maybe just the other dads in the group were a resource.
Yeah, I think so. But when I first became like a dad, I didn't know about that. I didn't have the group. Yeah, and you ask your parents if you have them, but yeah, there really aren't a lot of resources out there. And as you said, the classes, the prenatal classes are all like focused on the mom, and so that's what we've been trying to do with City Dads, is like we provide workshops, we provide resources, we provide classes, so that there is something for the dad and that they know like what they can do as part of being a dad.
That's right.
Yeah.
And same here, with the Dad Project. We do a lot of our programs in the school because we feel like we want the guys to, to come visit more of the classroom. But it's just really all about getting guys really more engaged with their kids and giving them that confidence, because once you see the confidence and you see these guys excited and proud to be fathers, that's when it changes.
I asked my mama. I mean, I'm blessed. I have a strong community of women. I think everyone's been talking about dads, and this is a conversation about dads. But part of the reason why I attribute a lot of my success as a parent, because I've had strong women in my life. My mother was a single parent herself, and so up until now, I had a question about what to do with my daughter's summer program, and I called my mom. So parents. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. We really appreciate it. Eli Littman, Alex Alfaro, Donald Williams, and Darby Saxby. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, KPCC.
Yeah, I also want to just thank so much to KPCC in person for bringing us all here together tonight, and also know that we're all going to be sticking around for a few minutes after we didn't get to all of your questions. If you want to continue talking to our guests and forming that community that, as we've discussed, is so important. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for engaging online, and we hope that you'll continue to join us on air, online, and in person again soon. Have a good night. Thanks so much.
Thank you.